Picture a fleet so immense it blots out the horizon. Over 800 ships, a floating city of Roman might, stretching as far as the eye can see. This wasn't just a military convoy. It was a logistical marvel, carrying tens of thousands of soldiers, cavalry, supplies, and the machinery of war. The sheer scale of this operation was unprecedented in ancient times. Caesar's second invasion of Britain in 54 BC was one of the largest amphibious operations of the ancient world, a bold statement of Roman power and ambition. The resources required were staggering: thousands of trees felled, countless craftsmen at work, and an army of sailors and soldiers assembled. The preparation alone was a feat of engineering and coordination. Caesar learned from his first failed attempt. He built new, wider ships with shallow drafts, perfect for the tricky British shores. These innovations were crucial for the success of the invasion. The sight of this armada shattered the illusion of the Channel as an impenetrable barrier for the Britons. It was a clear message that Rome could reach them anywhere. These ships were as much a psychological weapon as a physical one. Rome was coming, and it was unstoppable. The Britons could only watch in awe and fear. Caesar's invasion began not with a battle, but with this overwhelming display of force and ingenuity. It was a masterstroke of intimidation and strategy. The era of Roman ambition had arrived on Britain's shores, marking the beginning of a new chapter in the island's history. Why did Caesar, already conquering Gaul, set his sights on distant Britain? What drove him to risk his armies across the treacherous Channel, into lands that most Romans only knew from rumor and legend? First, British warriors were aiding his Gallic enemies. Cutting off this support was crucial to securing Gaul. The tribes of Britain sent weapons, men, and even leaders to help resist Roman rule, making them a constant thorn in Caesar's side. But it was also about glory. In Rome, nothing boosted a career like military triumph in unknown lands. Victories abroad brought fame, political power, and the admiration of the Senate and the people. Britain was shrouded in myth. Conquering it would make Caesar a legend and strengthen his hand against rivals. The island was seen as a place of magic, mystery, and untold riches, a land at the edge of the known world. Economic motives played a part too. Rumors of tin, lead, pearls, and new trade opportunities tempted Roman ambition. Control of these resources would enrich Rome and Caesar himself, fueling further campaigns. Conquest meant plunder, slaves, and new taxes, fuel for Caesar's political machine. Every victory brought wealth and manpower, strengthening his position back in Rome. And then, curiosity. Caesar was a writer and observer, eager to document the mysterious island and its people. He wanted to see for himself what lay beyond the horizon, to record new lands and customs for history. The invasion was a blend of strategy, ambition, greed, and discovery. It was a calculated gamble, but also an adventure into the unknown. For Caesar, it was the ultimate challenge, a chance to expand Rome's world and his own legacy. Success in Britain would set him apart from every Roman who came before. Classic Caesar, bold, calculated, and larger than life. His ambition would shape not just Rome, but the fate of Britain itself. Crossing the Channel was a leap into the unknown for the Romans. The English Channel's wild tides, fierce currents, and sudden storms were nothing like the calm Mediterranean. Roman ships, built for different waters, struggled in these conditions. Storms could wreck fleets in hours. Caesar's first crossing ended in disaster, with ships smashed and men stranded. The Romans had no maps, no reliable knowledge of the coastline. Every landing was a gamble. Finding a safe beach was critical. The wrong choice could doom the invasion before it began. The sea was as much an enemy as the Britons themselves. Every crossing risked disaster, testing Roman resolve and ingenuity. Caesar gambled everything on his navigators and the courage of his men. The Channel was a crucible. Only the boldest would survive. As Caesar's fleet neared the coast of Dover, the Romans were met with a daunting sight. The towering white cliffs bristling with British warriors, their spears and shields glinting in the morning light. For the invaders, it seemed an impossible place to land. Every vantage point above was held by determined defenders, ready to repel any attempt at invasion. Forced to search for a safer landing, Caesar's hesitation allowed British chariots and cavalry to shadow his fleet along the shoreline, tracking every movement and preparing to strike wherever the Romans might attempt to come ashore. When the Romans finally found a stretch of flat, open beach, they discovered the Britons already assembled, waiting in force and ready to strike at the first sign of weakness. Roman soldiers had to leap from their ships into deep, churning water, weighed down by heavy armor and shields, all while missiles rained down from the shore. Spears, arrows, and stones splashing into the surf around them. For a moment, fear and confusion froze the legions. But then, the standard-bearer of the 10th Legion plunged into the surf, holding the eagle high above the waves, calling his comrades to follow and not let Rome's honor falter. Inspired by his courage, the Romans surged forward, fighting desperately through the crashing waves and flying missiles, determined to reach the hostile shore and form a line of battle. The battle that followed was utter chaos. Waves and mud mixing with the clash of swords and shields, men struggling for footing as they fought hand-to-hand in the surf. Slowly, Roman discipline and steel began to prevail. Inch by inch, the legionaries pushed the Britons back, their training and determination overcoming the defenders' fierce resistance. At last, the Romans secured a precarious beachhead. Exhausted and battered, they had survived, but it had been a near disaster, a brutal and bloody welcome to the shores of Britain. The invasion had begun, but the real struggle was only just starting. Ahead lay an unknown land and a determined enemy. Caesar's men had survived the landing, but the island would test them at every turn, with new dangers and challenges lurking beyond the beach. The Britons had lost the beach, but not their spirit or the will to fight. They would regroup, ready to resist the invaders again. The campaign was far from over. Both sides braced for the long and bitter struggle that lay ahead. Just as the Romans settled in, disaster struck. A violent storm and high tide wrecked much of Caesar's fleet. Warships were swamped, transports smashed, and vital supplies lost. Suddenly, the Romans were stranded, low on food, with no easy escape. Sensing weakness, British tribes regrouped, ambushing Roman foragers and preparing for renewed resistance. Caesar's bold invasion became a desperate struggle for survival. He rallied his men, salvaging ships and scouring the countryside for grain. The focus shifted from conquest to escape. Winter in hostile Britain was unthinkable. The Britons pressed their advantage, hoping to trap and destroy the invaders. Caesar's leadership and Roman discipline were all that stood between survival and disaster. The storm had turned triumph into crisis. The fate of the expedition hung by a thread. Caesar wasn't beaten. He learned. After the near disaster, he spent the winter planning a second, far larger invasion. New ships were built, wider, lower, and better suited for Britain's tides. This time, he brought 5 legions and 2,000 cavalry. Overwhelming force. The massive fleet stunned the Britons. They abandoned the beaches rather than face the Roman onslaught. Caesar landed unopposed, quickly fortifying his camp and securing his ships. He wouldn't repeat past mistakes. This was a campaign built on hard-won lessons. The Britons melted into the forests, choosing guerrilla tactics over open battle. Caesar had adapted, but the real test would come inland. The invasion was back on, stronger than ever. Inland, the Britons fought smart. No pitched battles, just hit-and-run attacks from forests and chariots. Their leader, Cassivellaunus, united the tribes and used scorched earth tactics, denying the Roman supplies. Roman foragers became targets. Hunger and frustration set in. The decisive moment came at the Thames, where Cassivellaunus fortified the only crossing with deadly traps. Caesar ordered a bold assault. His men charged through the river, overwhelming the defenders. The Romans stormed Cassivellaunus's hill fort, but he escaped, and the fight dragged on. Betrayed by rival tribes, Cassivellaunus was forced to sue for peace. The British resistance collapsed. Caesar had won, but not decisively. Some tribes surrendered, others watched and waited. The campaign had shown Roman power, but also British resilience. Caesar's victory was real, but fragile. Britain was not conquered, but it was changed forever. The clash of worlds had left its mark. Caesar's expeditions didn't conquer Britain, but they shattered its mystery. He mapped the island, described its people, and exposed its resources and challenges to Rome. The Romans learned about the Druids, chariots, and guerrilla tactics, vital intelligence for future invasions. Caesar forged alliances, took hostages, and claimed tribute, bringing Britain into Rome's orbit. The campaigns proved Britain could be reached, but not easily held. Caesar's reports transformed Britain from legend to reality for the Roman world. His adventures boosted his fame and set the stage for future conquest. The lessons of Britain would echo for generations. Caesar's invasions changed Britain and Rome forever. He ended the island's isolation, opening it to trade, culture, and Roman influence. British elites adopted Roman coins and goods. The seeds of Roman Britain were sown. Caesar's reconnaissance paved the way for Claudius's successful conquest a century later. For Caesar, the British campaigns were a propaganda triumph, fueling his rise to power. He proved the Channel was no barrier to Roman ambition. Britain was not invincible. Rome would return. Caesar's legacy was one of boldness, adaptation, and relentless expansion. The clash of Rome and Britain had begun, and its echoes would shape history. Thanks for joining this journey to the edge of the Roman world. Subscribe for more ancient stories.